Welcome to the Startup Club podcast, where we share the journeys of invention, failure, resilience, and triumph of some of South Africa's foremost tech startup founders and investors. I'm Matthew Marsden, founder of Startup Club. And on the show today, Karidas Tshintsholo, CEO and co-founder of Khula, the pioneering agritech startup dedicated to empowering farmers through access to markets and financing. Now founded in 2016, Khula is a graduate of the Google for Startups Accelerator, a past winner of the MTN Business App of the Year, and has raised considerable investment from leading corporates and investors alike. Importantly for its mission, the business now enables the trade of thousands of products from hundreds of suppliers on its platform and is changing the face of the South African agri-supply chain for good.
But I think terrible as things were at the time, something in me just was like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. But the beauty of hitting a hard low, a terrible, awful low, that it can't get worse. And even now, where I am with Khula and building other businesses, that's always my reference points because things can get bad. We can lose clients. But where that low that I was at then, I'm ready for it because I've been there. I know it's almost like people are scared of failure. But if you've faced it, if you've looked at failure in the eye, you've taken those punches and you've been in the dirt where it's horrible and it's terrible, you're so much stronger as an entrepreneur because you know what it's like, you know, when everything goes away.
Now, Africa is home to 60% of the world's arable land, and farming is one of the primary sources of economic output and job creation across the continent. In South Africa, the industry is anchored by large-scale operators, intermediaries, cooperatives, and FMCGs. But like most parts of the continent, this industry is supported by tens of thousands of smallholder farmers who play a critical role in the agricultural supply chain. Yet, these farmers face a particular and widespread set of challenges that makes the business's prospects even that much harder, from financing to education to marketing, selling, and transport of their produce. Now, thankfully, there has been a surge in tech-enabled agri-solutions deployed across the continent over the past 2 decades, with the industry predicted to reach $1 trillion value by 2030. And in South Africa, Khula is one such player empowering farmers through its innovative platform by connecting them with suppliers, buyers, and financing. Founded in 2016, the business now enables the trade of thousands of products from hundreds of local and international suppliers on its platform. It's a graduate of the Google for Startups Accelerator, a past winner of the MTN Business App of the Year, and has raised considerable investment from the likes of PepsiCo, ABSA, AECI, and E2. But for the company's founder and CEO, the Khula story is one of humble beginnings and immense resilience, fueled by a passion to create sustainable solutions for underserved markets. Karidas Tshintsholo was born in the early 90s and raised in a small township on the Gauteng and Mpumalanga border to a single-parent household where his mom was a domestic worker. After graduating top of his class at Ekangala High School in 2012 and securing a scholarship to one of the country's top universities, Karidas was seemingly destined for a career as an actuary before a drastic change of heart propelled him into the life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, man, I grew up in a township. I think like many kids in the country, you know, born in a township called Ekangala, like you said, on the Mpumalanga Gauteng border, raised by a single mother. I think I told the story at the event about how my dad did a Goku. You know, as soon as I was born, he kind of did a young disappearing act. And I think which is actually a very common story in our country, and I think it's a very common story around the world. It's actually more common than the alternative.
Sure.
And I think my mom had depended on him, and I think when he left, he kind of left her stranded. You know, initially we lived in a shack, in a community of shacks. You know, if you go to a township, there's like different layers.
Sure.
There's where the teachers and the policemen live and stuff like that, and then you kind of get where the clerks live, and then the RDP houses, and then the shacks is kind of like the most bottom.
Sure.
But I think, you know, I always tell this story not for sympathy or whatever, because when you're a kid, you don't even understand that
And
you're
you don't
poor.
know any difference, sure.
You're just happy you can play, But it was quite tough. I remember, even when it rains, so everything in the shack has to be a bit elevated, so that the water, because if it's flooding, the water would pass through. So you just need to be on top and you kind of watch the water pass through. Grew up, very, very early age like that.
What age did your dad leave?
I think in the very beginning, actually.
Okay.
I think he left my mom when she was pregnant, actually.
Okay. Wow.
Which is another common thing.
Yeah, crazy.
She was alone with me. And I think the big thing in her life was when she got an RDP house. When at least then there was a sort of bit of a solid structure. And that's the house that is still our house today. Or at least I've built a house, but it's the same yard, that I grew up in.
Wow.
Looking back now, she would cook outside using fire. And I think maybe even the agriculture bug maybe even started from her because we had peaches, we had spinach, we had pumpkin, the backyard was just, my mom just planted,
And this is necessity driving this, right?
Yeah. I mean, she's a rural girl from the Eastern Cape, so she wasn't going to fold her hands. So she would do her domestic work, but then when she comes back, the yard was just full of trees and peach trees and all that kind of stuff. And I think I'm always wary of saying it was a tough upbringing, but I was a kid, and as a kid you play, you take a rock, and if it's a rock you play, put plastic together. So it was quite a bright childhood in that sense.
Tell us, and sorry for interrupting there, but what kind of kid were you? Were you bright, bubbly, center of attention? Were you quite introverted?
I was a naughty kid. I was a very naughty kid. I think I still am.
Sure.
I think I've never followed the rules. My mom would always say, "Awulaleli," meaning you don't listen. So I've never liked following rules for rules' sake. So growing up throughout, I've just never been a rule. I follow rules when they make sense.
Sure.
So my mom would be like, "No, but don't do this," but I'm like, why? And why don't do this? And like, why? It's like, no, but why are you answering back? And I've always been that kind of a kid. I think the penny dropped that things were tough at home probably when I was 5, 6, where now you go to school. Because when you go to school, you now meet kids from the other side, because when you're growing up, if everybody's poor, you don't really have anything to contrast it against. So you take that as reality. But once you start going to school, you see that, no, man, that kid's lunchbox is better than mine, or, that kid gets picked up, like this or whatever. And I think that's when I started really drawing the parallels. And I always tell the story of a specific moment where I think my life changed, which was, this ice cream truck that comes to my township, and every township to this day. Every Sunday they sell ice cream and it goes ding, 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 ding. And as a kid, you run from the streets and you pace to tell your parents, can I have 2 rand or 1 rand to go buy some ice cream? And the one time my mom didn't have it. And I was kicking her and I was crying and I was holding her skirt like, hey, how come you don't have, 2 rand? You're an adult, and she said something to the effect of, you're the man of the house. And we have to work together, and I just don't have it. And I think from that day, I kind of thought, okay, I need to help out. And you're 5, 6 years old, but in my head, I was like, I need to help out. And I think the same year, she couldn't buy me Christmas clothes. So if you grew up in the township, Christmas is a big deal. So you need to wear new clothes on Christmas Day. You need to wear new clothes on New Year's Day. You just have to, because all the kids are wearing new clothes. And I think she was going to this other church and they gave her some hand-me-down clothes and she hid them at the top of the cupboard where I couldn't reach. And she took them out on Christmas Day and I wore those clothes. And, my friends are like, no, man, these don't smell. Because, there's a new clothes smell, and you kind of smell like, this is not new, bro. This is not. I said, no, this is new. My mom said it's new. And they kind of smelled it. And then they showed me some defects on the clothes. And then I realized, okay, these aren't new. And I was quite sad. I remember I was quite sad that festive period. Same thing happened on New Year's Day, and they show you that, hey, your clothes are torn, or
and kids are cruel.
Yeah, they're losing color and hobo, that kind of stuff. And I think that really hurt me as a kid. And I think, like I said, even though you grew up in a poor community, you're all kind of fine because you don't know better.
Yeah.
And that, I was really hurt that December. And I said, okay, I'm going to gather cents throughout the year and just give them to my mom so that if Christmas comes around, then I can have some new clothes. And I think that's the start of my entrepreneurial journey, to be honest with you. I always say I'm an entrepreneur by circumstance, not by choice. And that was the circumstance that propelled me into an environment where I had to contribute, and I really felt I needed to help out. And it started off as just Christmas clothes, really. Christmas clothes and the ice cream truck, that was my goal. And I really started doing things. And it's only later, when I was much older, where it was called entrepreneurship. It was given a name. And it's a common story for many kids in townships where you kind of have to make a plan, So, yeah.
So talk to us. I ask a lot of the guests on our show, or the founders I'm honored to interview, where does the penny drop for them as an entrepreneur, or were they innately entrepreneurial? There are these classic stories of, as far back as I can remember, I ran a lemonade stand, and, that turned into a brand, and then I started stocking the shop. It's a far more linear and maybe romanticized journey. What is that first step into entrepreneurship? You didn't know it was called that, but what does that look like for you? How did you start to contribute? Yeah,
so I think at the time it was one, I knew I needed to get money, and then I was like, but how do you get money? To get money, someone needs to give you money, but nobody's going to give you just for the sake of giving you.
It needs to be valued.
Yeah, the beauty of having now being in grade 1 or grade 2 was there was a distinction between what we call the cheese boys or the cheese kids, the Xbox kids,
yes.
Danone kids, we'd call them Xbox, PlayStation, Danone kids, the kids who kind of had polony in their fridge. And
there are going to be some people listening to this who are chuckling to themselves because they remember.
And the juice that you don't dilute, there's like key markers. We have Wild Island or something you have to put water in, and they just pour the juice straight away. And you realize that these kids aren't very good with their hands. They're not us on our side. You don't have a soccer ball. You just take enough plastics, you burn it a little bit, it hardens, that's your soccer ball, and you play. You push tires, you never really had anything that's store bought. But there was one common thing across both sides where we all liked wire cars. So in townships, there's these cars sort of made of wire. Really beautiful cars, by the way. Talking BMWs, Hummers, made proper.
The craftsmanship's amazing.
It's incredible. It's incredible, But then the cheese boys can't do that because they have PlayStation. They have, they buy them toys that they can push and stuff like that. Whereas with us, everything was handmade and stuff like that. But the one thing we liked across the board was wire cars. And I think I had a wire car, naturally. And one of my richer cheese boyfriends from school was like, hey, I'll buy that. My mom said she'll give you whatever, 50 Rand for this. And I'm going, I can make another one this weekend. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think he bought it. And once he bought it, then because he took it to the nicer part, the cheese boyville. And he was looking cool, pushing a BMW around. And other people were like, hey, where did you get this BMW? I was like, hey, a kid in my class. And they said, hey, man, can you help us with more of these cars? So I gathered a few of my friends. I wasn't very good at making wire cars. I need to make that clear. But one of my close friends was super, super good. Gathered a few guys. And then I went and I got the wire. So you need wire and you need a little bit of iron stuff. Stole it actually from the sewer. Just cut it out and brought it home, rolled it, and basically kind of gathering the resources. So I had the talent there, brought the resources. The guys made 5 wire cars. I told my friend from school that, hey, on Saturday, we'll meet at the 4-way stop. So put the cars in a wheelbarrow, put them there. They came and they bought them. And I think it was $50 for one. And then I gave $30 to the guy who made it, and I kept $20. Amazing. And there's a kid, $20. No,
that's crazy.
In 2006, 2007.
And you don't know what margin is, and
you know what I mean?
And broking is, and yet that's what you're doing, right?
Exactly. So came home, And I said to my mom, hey, here's some money. And I remember she kind of teared up, and I was like, look, amazing. Christmas clothes.
Yeah, amazing.
Let's make it happen.
Super special.
Yeah, that was kind of, I guess, it was entrepreneurship, but undefined. There was identifying of a gap.
Sure.
There was gathering the resources, and there's, even though I wasn't the one building, like now I'm not the one coding at Khula, but you get a bunch of devs together, kind of assembling the resources, finding the market. But at the time, it was just a way to get extra cash.
Sure.
And then from that capital, funny enough, I'm calling it capital now.
Yes.
I figured out that you could buy a pack of sweets for 7 rand back in the day. And if you sold them, you got like 16 rand, something like that. But like 20 cents each or 10 cents each in a pack.
Sure.
And then you sell them.
Yeah.
Then I did that. So I used to sell sweets throughout school. It was smuggling because it's not allowed. You're not allowed to sell sweets. And I had some competitors who came into the sweets market. Then you need to find a more exclusive brand of sweets. So if your mom goes to town, you tell her to find a brand of sweets that the other competitors don't have. You need to sell certain sweets before break and certain sweets after break. But all of that was me coming back home and saying, Mom, here's some money, here's some money, here's some money.
It's like a little microeconomy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But at the time, it's not called entrepreneurship where I come from. It's Karidas or Panda. It's just kind of the
hustle,
way of hustling. Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me in the context of all of this, right? So super humble beginnings by your own admission. You now have figured out that actually I can find gaps, I can solve them, I might be able to make some money off of that.
Yeah.
What did you want to be? When kids are growing up, they want to be certain things, lawyer, fireman, whatever.
Yeah.
Was there something that you wanted to be, or was that too far-fetched?
There was. No, I wanted to be a gangster. Okay. I really wanted to be a gangster. Sure. I know it's not a sexy thing to admit, but where I grew up on the rough side of town, where we revered gangsters and we praised them. And also, contrary to popular belief, those guys leave the township to go do whatever they do elsewhere, and then they come back looking cool, know. So as a kid, those were my role models. Those are the guys I saw driving the nice cars. Those are the guys I saw building houses for their parents. Those are the guys I saw that we kind of looked up to, and there was this one guy in my street, I think he did hijacking or stuff like that. And I remember he drove an E30 BMW 325i. And that became my dream car. And I was like, man, this guy is so incredibly cool. To this day, I actually ended up building one, and I drive it on the weekends. But I wanted to really, really be a gangster, because
but it's what you know, right?
It's what I know, exactly. Which I think for me to today shows the importance of role models. I think even in startups, one of the issues in the SA startup community or business community is that we don't have good examples. If you're a black kid in South Africa, you're kind of looking at, the traditional billionaires, you want to mention them by name, but
big industry,
big industry, right? But also a lot of them, you can't relate to their stories because guys who were at the right place at the right time, a lot of them came from 94. I can't relate to that, which then ends up breeding a lot of tenderpreneurs, so the power of having a good role model is quite massive. So for me, I really, really wanted to be a gangster at some point because gangsters were cool. I think it's only in high school where I was doing debating, I was doing public speaking, and people were like, "You'd make a great lawyer." I was like, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I could see the suits in the car.
It's not too bad. Maybe I can look at law. And I really fell in love with mathematics, I think, in grade 10. And maths just became my life. And
you end up doing, I mean, despite your background, you end up doing really well, right? So this is Ikangala High School, 2008 to 2012.
Yeah.
And you actually end up becoming the top student. Yeah?
Yeah. I was quite, I love my books. Yeah, I really love my books. I think I fell in love with maths, to be honest, to this day.
Which is not very gangster.
It's not very gangster.
I think I told you that in person, right?
It's not. I was a bit of an unconventional, unconventional gangster, but fell in love with maths. To this day, man, I find mathematics fascinating. So I would do it for fun. I did it for fun. I mean, yeah, it was like my number one sort of subject from grade 10. I would do stuff that's not in the curriculum. It was just so fascinating. It was myself and 5 friends. And we just really, really fell in love, with mathematics. And it was either that, if I wasn't doing that, I had a car wash. So this business journey kind of grew. I saw the margins I think I understood margins, but in my head, it's like, that makes more money than that.
Yes, exactly right. Yes,
so I had a car wash. I think my highest margin business was gardening. So we did, in townships and households, every mother, they don't like doing their curtains. Curtains are a big job. Blankets are a big job. And gardening was a big job. So I assembled a squad where we said, look, we'll do your curtains, we'll wash your curtains. We will, it's called spring cleaning. We could do the whole, all the dirty stuff you don't want to do. We would go in and we'd do, and the margins on that were crazy. That was
pretty much time.
You'd be really dirty at the end of the day, but sheesh, you'd be having $900 personally, if you had a really good day. And yeah, I think during that time, I was really in love with maths, man. I fell in love. I think the academic side of me started really coming out. Did really, really well. I mean, we beat the private schools back to back in our district. We were a township school, but we just kept beating the private schools. And then they would have these competitions. There was something called the MPC Challenge, which was organized by the Reserve Bank governor. We beat all the private schools. And the governor was so impressed about how do these township kids know so much about monetary policy. And she added me on the mailing list of the Reserve Bank. It was Jill Marcus at the time. So yeah, I started to become more of an academic, falling in love with maths. I heard about actuarial science, and literally my question was, what's the hardest thing I could study in university? Because I enjoyed a challenge. It was like, there's this thing called actuarial science. I was like, how does it pay? It pays well. Like, it's maths and it pays well.
Absolutely.
So the academic in me started coming out, I think 2010. The other side of 2010 really became a super academic in high school.
And then tell me, you have an opportunity to get you end up going to UCT.
Yes.
Right? One of the most prestigious universities in the country, to study AECI, actual science, for our listeners. Was that on the Alan Gray scholarship, or did that come later?
No. So I got the scholarship in matric. So the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation picks what they think are the top young matriculants or students in Southern Africa. And yeah, fortunately, it was actually on my teacher's desk, the form. He didn't even tell us about it. And I was like, that looks interesting. Applied for it. And I got the scholarship to go study at UCT, to go study actuarial science. Also got a bursary. I think I had 3 bursaries going in. I was one of those kids in the newspaper of the matric results. That gave me an opportunity to go to UCT. And I think Alan Gray started the definition of what I was. And I remember in the interview, it was in Sandton, my very first time in Sandton. I had a piece of paper. My teacher wrote, you're going to take a taxi to here, and then you're going to take, and she gave me her Gautrain card. I remember coming out and I was just looking
in awe, right?
How amazing this place was. And then I went to have the interview, and I think they stopped my interview twice. Zimkita is actually the CEO of Alan Gray Endowment now, and she started crying during the interview. And I think they were seeing this entrepreneurship thing. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, I do this. And for me, these are normal, you know. So they're like, where have you shown leadership? I'm going, okay, which one do you want to pick? Especially. And according to them, I actually got the scholarship at the interview date, because Alan Gray has like 5 stages.
Different tiers,
and interview was the 3rd stage.
Amazing.
But at that stage, they were like, no, this kid's got the entrepreneurial bug, and they were the first to really explain what entrepreneurship is and what is this thing that I've been doing all my life.
Now, and thank you for sharing that, of course. Obviously, there's a funny irony in getting into UCT, of course, because you don't stay for the full time. But the journey is incredibly formative. You did meet your now co-founder, Matt, at university. Talk to us about how that ends up happening. Alan Gray themselves have an entrepreneurship program as well, vertical, that they focus on. Talk to me about how we go from, cool, I'm comfortable with an actual career and getting paid well to do my thing with maths, to
Yeah.
Okay, actually, let's do this entrepreneurship thing full time, and perhaps how you met, how you brought Matt into the fray.
Yeah, so I actually met him in Matric at the camp, Alan Gray camp, and then ended up going to UCT. I think I might have been the first kid from my school to ever go to UCT. So when I got there, I knew nobody.
Sure.
The only people I knew were the Alan Gray people that I was at camp with. Sure. So naturally, I gravitated towards them. And the one thing that Matt and I have always shared is almost an ability to dream. We always, even if you found us driving together, we always just building castles in the air. Imagine if this happened. That's, you know what I mean? But we believe, our dreams. So we believe our own BS. We really believe,
you have to, right?
We really believe our own BS. And I think that's our superpower, So I think initially, still heavy academic first semester at UCT, loving the actuarial science, loving the calculus and everything. And I remember we just had, and some of them were Alan Gray girls. So in our head, we were like, we're going to show them. We're gonna, we're not cool, but we're going to show them. And the one way to show them was the Jamboree. So Alan Gray does this big annual event for the varsity students called the National Jamboree, where you present business ideas. And we were like, as first years, if we present it there and we win, we're going to be
massive
on the pinnacle because we're going to show them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was literally, I wish I had a deeper story. I wish I had a more sexy.
No, it's fine.
But literally was, we're going to show them.
Isn't that the stuff that motivates young men, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we put this idea together. We started working on it 3 months before. By the time we get to Jamboree, we had like 2 or 3 ideas. And each one of us presented an idea. And I think we made the top 3, top 5. And everybody was, blown away
super
at these
impressed.
first years or whatever. And then we were on the big stage, then we were important. Yes, we're still nerds, but it was kind of a way to show them. But after Jamboree, what we didn't expect is that we were actually going to keep working on the one business and we were going to keep, kind of pressing forward. And we put together a bunch of our friends. There was 9 of us in the beginning, in July that year, 9 of us. So we even had a picture of us in a room. Everyone was like, entrepreneurship. Until exams came, test 3s came. When test 3s came, people were like, hey, I need to go stay. So the number kept decreasing. By the time we got to exams, there was just 3 of us left. And I don't know, even to this day, I don't know how to explain it, but there's a conviction inside you or inside us that makes you want to keep waking up, makes you want to keep doing this thing, even though it doesn't make sense. So our first business, I wouldn't say was inspired by, lightning or we just wanted to show them. And after showing them, we kind of kept going with that business.
Sure. And this, just for the context of the listeners, this is really around financial education.
Yes. So this was around, we actually wanted to build a financial education game, but that was too expensive to start with. So we said, okay, we'll do financial education content and we'll do a magazine.
This is called Money Tree.
This was called Money
Group.
Tree.
Yes,
Money Tree Group, or Student Investor. Some people might know it as that. And at the time, a magazine cost, 300, 500,000 for a print run. And obviously we don't have that money. I think I was getting 1.1 from Alan Gray and 800 from my bursary. So you're making a total of 1.8 a month.
Yes. That's not million listeners, that's thousands.
1.8 thousand.
Yes.
Which is a lot of money, more money than I'd ever seen.
As a kid, sure.
And we wanted this magazine and there was no way it was going to happen. So Matt and I dream. Matt and I sit and we freaking dream. We're like, dude, we can do this. We can do this. How can we get people to do the job and then we'll pay them later? Because in our head, we're like, we know it's going to be successful once it happens, but how do we get them to do the job and then we'll pay them later?
Sure.
Mind you, this business is not even registered on CIPC. It's in our heads. So then we decided to meet with some publishers and some printers. We met them at Hustle Grill in Rondebosch. UCT people will know where that is. It's kind of like this dingy, serious-looking steak place.
Yes.
So we sat at the back, booked like a fancy corner at the very back, wore nice suits, set up meetings with publishers, and I think they weren't doing too great, the publishers and the printers. So they were desperate for business. So they came in, we're like, look, we've got this all together. We made them feel so insecure. We're like, we're not sure if you can deliver. We're not sure if you've got what it takes to deliver this product.
Yes.
And they're like, no. We're like, look, the guy that just walked out, he seemed like he can do it, and they'll do it up front. Like, no, we'll also do it up front. That time there was no guy that just walked out. And they were like, no, they'll do it up front. We did the same with the printers. So everybody agreed to do this magazine.
To produce this, yeah.
I'm telling you, we did not have CIPC. We were not even a registered business. This thing was in our head. Sent them some documentation, and we started scoping the magazine. When I was writing my final exam in end of first year, I think it was MEM 1000, when I got back to Res, there was 10,000 or 20,000 copies of magazines stacked outside. So I knew we were royally fucked at that point. And the logic was, this story of a king went to fight in a foreign land with 5,000 men, and when he got there, there was 50,000 men waiting for them, and he rushed back to the ship, and he burned the ship, and they had no choice, either die or fight, and they had to fight. And to show you how much BS we had told each other, we were like, we like that king, either at that point when they printed, and the magazines are here, right? We have to sell them, just one way or other, or we go to jail, and that was the narrative that we used at that time. And we started getting calls from lawyers. We're gonna sue you. So the printers now want their money. Everybody wants their money. And at that point, I knew we were screwed. And they said, we're gonna tell UCT, you're gonna get expelled. We're gonna tell you a scholarship that you've committed fraud. We're like, oh, is it fraud? And literally went to every business event I could potentially go to. Nobody was interested in this thing, And I don't know why, but there was still no CIPC. Everybody said no. Everybody said no. Everybody said no. Until late November, when I was already back in Gauteng. And now I'm worried because my mom's going to find out that I'm getting expelled and I'm losing my scholarship because, we're selling the magazines, but they weren't selling fast enough for us to.
And you guys had, just for context, you had no money. I mean, you were literally.
No, we were zilch.
You were like milking everything. Free Wi-Fi, cafes.
1,800 a month is what I was getting. Wow. And I don't get that money in December. So I knew November didn't work. Scholarships don't pay you when you're home. So then I was like, okay, sharp. I got an email just when I'd given up and thought everything was over. I get this email from the Reserve Bank saying, hey, the Monetary Policy Forum is happening in Pretoria.
This is the same one. Again,
this is the same one from high school.
The
same one from high school,
quite serendipitous.
So I said, like, Monetary Policy Forum, do you want to come? And I'm going, it's a business event and I'm invited. I was like so excited. They even had these fancy invitations, and they only invite top, business people to come listen in. The MPC will explain why they made the interest rate decision that they made. Took a taxi to Pretoria. I had a blue suit at the time. I even have a picture of the day, and pointy shoes. And I'm like, I need to look like a businessman. And then during the pre-event snacks, I'm telling these guys, this is the biggest thing. And they're like, dude, what's your margin? What's your whatever? What's your turnover? And I have no answers to all of these questions. I'm just like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Sure. Nobody was interested. We went into the MPF session. And when we went into the session, I knew that we were screwed. If this doesn't work today, we're getting expelled, And then I drew on my maths or the academic in me. And there was something I didn't understand, or a flaw that I thought the MPC had made in making their interest rate decision. So I raised my hand and they picked my hand, and I criticized them basically on this flaw. I'm like, how did you guys not consider this? And then posed the question, and Jill started laughing, and then I think it was the issue they were discussing. And then she passed it on to Lesitja. He was still deputy governor then. He laughed, and they all passed. They were kind of sitting together, and they kept bouncing this thing around. I think it was only Francois who took a jab at it. So everybody in the house started laughing at how this first year, because I did say I was a first year kid at UCT, had kind of asked this fundamental question to the MPC. And everybody wanted to talk to me now afterwards. And I'm like, good shot. Everyone's like, hey, but they wanted to hire me. So they're trying to hire me after school. I'm like, no. Sure. Kept chatting to them. Yeah, and one guy was our first investor. He asked me questions about the business. He literally said, you're talking a lot of shit right now. You're talking a lot of shit. And I thought he wasn't interested. And what he said to me was, look, you're talking a lot of shit, but you've got the fire. It's almost like I'm going to consider investing in this thing, but there is no business to invest in. I'm going to invest in you because you seem like you've got a screw loose. You're a little bit crazy. And when he met Matt and our other co-founder at the time, he thought these kids are crazy enough to just do this. And he gave us the money. We paid off the printers. We paid off everybody. By the start of second year, all our bills were paid. And then we could now start, building a business. He gave us some office space in Cape Town, in Newlands, close to the stadium. Now we had an office. And the first people we went to hire was those girls that made fun of us and said we were wankers. We gave them jobs, made them work for us, and we were like, yeah.
We've arrived. Yes, we've arrived.
Gave them a couple of projects or whatever.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that was the start of the formalization, because his secretary helped us do the CIPC, set up structures, and that was the birth of Money Tree.
It became a business, right?
Became
As
a proper
opposed
business.
to a hustle.
Exactly, or an idea, yeah.
And I love, and thanks for sharing just the candor of that story, but the more founders I interview, especially that first angel check, actually, it's amazing how angels, this is a relationship. Right?
100%.
They look at the individual, they go,
100%.
do they have the chutzpah? Do they
Exactly.
have it? Because the idea is going to shift and it's got to be manageable and the business will
100%.
change. Now talk to us, because obviously you are technically, when this investment comes in, still a full-time student.
Yeah, 100%.
Money Tree Group has just recovered quite a bad debt it had. Now got some cash in the biz. You guys actually end up deciding we want to run the business full-time and dropping out of university. Was that in second year?
No. So second year we ran it. It was third year when we dropped out.
Excuse me.
So second year we ran it.
And was it good? Was it a good business?
It was good business. I think that's probably one of the hardest I've worked in my life, or hardest times that I've worked. She tries to sleep 3-4 hours. Actually, Alan created a documentary. I think if you Google my name on YouTube, you might see it, which is actual footage of what was happening at that particular time. Wake up in the morning, you go to the office. I had a couple of sharp friends. I had a friend from the Middle East. When I would come back, he would be in my room and he would tell me what happened during the day, what concepts to do. And then from 7 p.m. to maybe midnight, I'm just pushing out the work that was done in the day. I'm making deals with my tutors that, look, dude, I'm not going to attend your tat, but I'm building a business. I think the one lovely thing about UCT really celebrates entrepreneurs. I think the likes of Mark Shuttleworth, there were like a lot of stories about guys who had come from UCT and built stuff. So when you said, look, I can't do this, but here's what I'm building, they kind of felt like they were part of your story, So they kind of understood. So the whole of second year was a balancing act between school and business. Wow. God knows how I passed that year. Kind of that balancing act. But I think by the time the second semester came, I felt that I had to choose. And my heart for actuarial science kept on dying deeply. But in my head, I'm going, the right thing to do is to stay in school. The right thing to do is to stay in school and drop business. But my heart was like a breakup before a breakup, And again, we sat down with Matt. We do our thing where we dream. We're like, look, dude, how bad can it be? I remember when we made the decision to drop out, it was UCT has a BCom and they have a business science degree. So if you do the BCom finishes earlier than the business science, and we were on the business science stream. So we're like, okay, if we go to Joburg for 1 year and it doesn't work out, we're going to come back into the BCom stream. So we'll still do the hats and the graduation in the time that everybody's kind of
there's always a contingency plan.
Because we didn't care too much about honors, right? So we can still do the hat. So in our head, it was deep for everybody else in our lives. But for us, it's just 1 year. And then we come back. We have the ceremony, and then we still have graduated. But I'm telling you, everybody in my life, everybody said, no, don't do it. It's your future.
Well, it's unconventional wisdom.
Literally, everybody was like, do not do it. I think the only person that really backed me, I'd say, was my mother. But even she didn't back me because she understood. She backed me because she's seen me do a lot of weird things over time. And I'd kind of earned my trust. And she was like, okay, here's another weird thing. So go ahead and do it. And by the time we went into third year, Matt dropped out beginning of third year and he came to Joburg. And I was like, okay, we still have an office in Cape Town. Let me see if I can run things from here while you're there so we can limit the flights. And
third year is 2015?
2015 is third year. 2015 is third year. Okay. And my soul was dead, man. Every day I was on that campus, my soul was absolutely dead and I was never on campus. And I knew after 2 months that I just needed to leave. And I also left. came up to Joburg. But the reasoning was very simple. 1 year, if it doesn't work out, the scholarship will take us back. And we'll just go and kind of do this thing, go back to school. And to tell you, I'm still in that 1 year.
Yeah, almost 10 years later, right?
Still in that 1 year of dropping out, yeah.
Thanks for listening. We're going to take a very quick break, and if you're enjoying today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us boost our reach. I'm Matthew Marsden, and this is the Startup Club podcast. Now, I know that for context, that year when you decided to come to Joburg, you'd mentioned to our live audience that it was probably one of the hardest years of your life, right? Despite having raised quote unquote investment, it's always comparable and relative to what life's demands are. I think this is around 2016. And I think you mentioned to me that you were essentially broke, right? It was the hardest year of your life. You owed loads of people money. You used McDonald's for internet. Talk to us about why was that the case? Wasn't there promise and business in the pipeline? And what was the thing? What made it so hard?
So when we came to Joburg, we were kings. We had just cracked, because after getting the investment, we started making money. So we were making good profits. That second year, we were balancing things. We had good cash. When we came to Joburg, look, dude, we were staying in a fancy guest house. We were renting a car. Imagine renting a car every single day, driving around in a rental.
That's exhausting.
We did groceries at Woolies. That was a big deal,
as a student or student age.
So we were doing well, a couple of hundreds of thousands in the bank account, promising deals, until a massive deal came our way to do a gig for a government client. And I think it was going to cost us 400,000 or 500,000, which was what we had in the bank account. But we were going to make upwards of $1 million from that deal. And we were like, we the masters at business. Look at us, So we took all the money we had and put it into trying to make that deal, that government deal happen. And they took exactly 14 months to pay us. So we took every cent we had to make that deal happen. When it was time to pay, there were stories, they wanted brown paper bags, somebody needed to be taken care of. It just got very, very weird very quickly. And I think that's when our entrepreneurship resolve was tested in terms of what kind of entrepreneurs we wanted to be. And I remember Matt and I were kind of saying, we're not going to drop out of varsity to do kickbacks. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this the honorable way. And we've always had this analogy of, if you had to buy a good night's sleep, imagine how expensive it would be. You can have all the money in the world, but if you can't sleep, peacefully, you can't buy. It's priceless to have a good night's sleep. So 14 months they didn't pay us. So we ran out of money. And worst thing was we just moved into a fancy apartment in Sandton, unfurnished. So we lived in this empty, hollow place where your voice would echo. We borrowed money from everybody. The first 3 months, everybody we could borrow money from, we borrowed money. After 6 months, we couldn't pay. Everybody wanted their money back. It was over 200,000 in debt that we were in. And we ran out of everything. So we bought potatoes. I hate potatoes. Okay, I don't hate, but I love potatoes, guys. I love potatoes. I hated potatoes at the time.
You're in the potato business, but you had too much.
Too many. You'd boil them. You would scramble them. You would do all sorts of stuff, And like you said, for airtime, we went to McDonald's, just so you could have a bit of internet. I had 4 email addresses. When the other 100 megabytes lapses, you use the other one.
All the life hacks,
It was an incredibly tough time, and we were depressed. We were super, super depressed. All we did was watch series, and everybody from UCT is saying, how's it going? And like, we're trying. But all you're doing every single day is I'm sure Game of Thrones was out, but you're just camping, watching series, and trying to stay alive, waiting for this client to finally pay you. And I think one of the stories I told at the event was, this day where I had a meeting in Pretoria, and potential client that was going to potentially give us good money. But I only had enough fuel to go one way and not fuel to come back. And I remember thinking, from calculus, the road goes up and down to Pretoria. In Midrand it goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down. So if I have enough fuel to go one way, if I looked at how fuel on a car works and whatever. So if I switch the car off or put it in neutral on the downhills and drive very slowly, not accelerate too much, so don't burn too much fuel.
Who says education is wasted?
You know what I mean? There's calculus coming into the equation.
Sure.
And I was able to go to the meeting, and I came back. I think I ran out of fuel at the gate, and we pushed the car in. And I've never been more proud of myself than that day where I had enough to go, but not enough to come back. But that's how awful things were. And I think the turning point, my first turning point was obviously when I was 5 or 6, with Christmas clothes. My turning point into being an entrepreneur that I am today was then, because that 14 months overlapped into the new year.
Yep.
And Ellen Gray was like, we'll take you back. My bursary was going to take me back. We could go back to UCT. There was a way out. There was a way out from this terrible experience where you don't have food, you don't have anything. But I think something in us knew that this was it. It kind of knew that this was, I can never explain it to this day, but bad as things are, you can go back to a nice catering res and a nice, you can go back to that nice varsity life, but something in us knew that this was it. This was, and I can never explain it to this day. And I think that's the point where you become, you're screwed. As in, you'll never be able to do a job. I'm not a job guy. You just know at that point, you'll never be able to do a job ever in your life. Because if things are this bad
and I still
this horrible, and you want to be here, we knew we were screwed. And when we stuck it out, I think that's the moment I became, I guess, an entrepreneur in the sense of what I am now. But the beauty of that period is that we knew things can't get worse than this. Terrible as they were. I mean, our landlord, if there's one guy who doesn't like me out there, it's probably, the guy who was our landlord at the time. We stopped paying rent for months. We would hide from him. He would switch off the water, switch off the lights, because we weren't paying anything, And then we learned landlord-tenant law, realized they can't kick us out. But I think terrible as things were at the time, something in me just was like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. But the beauty of hitting a hard low, a terrible, awful low, that it can't get worse. And even now, where I am with Khula and building other businesses, that's always my reference points, because things can get bad. We can lose clients. But where that low that I was at then, I'm ready for it, because I've been there. I know it's almost like people are scared of failure. But if you've faced it, if you've looked at failure in the eye, you've taken those punches, and you've been in the dirt where it's horrible and it's terrible, you're so much stronger as an entrepreneur, because you know what it's like, when everything goes away. And
it's rare that folks that actually end up building significant things don't have that point of reference to fall back on. Right. It's very rare that and I actually think probably near impossible that it's just been smooth sailing, organic progression. This is a life of the constant pivot and the constant rebound.
100%,
and
100%.
I think your journey is such a brilliant illustration of that.
It grounds you. It makes you respect money. I mean, even to this day at Khula, we don't just spend money. You respect how you allocate money. You just, it's that grounding that you need as an entrepreneur when you've been through that pit of hell. But because you've been there, you have so much strength. Like, I look at where we are now, and this is amazing.
Yes,
and even if we lost 50% of our revenue, even if things got bad and there was 4 of us left, it's still good. You know what I mean? It's still way better than where we would have been. So it's almost my ability to take punches, my ability to take hits, my ability to look failure in the eye. Somebody might be a smart entrepreneur than me. They might be sharper. They might be whatever, but they can't take hits like I do. I'm telling you now, throughout, not even just my entrepreneurship journey, my whole life as a whole,
this is it.
You cannot take, you can be smarter than me, you can be sharper than me, but you're not going to work harder than me, and you're not going to take hardships the way I can. And I think that moment was defining as well for my more adult entrepreneurship life, is that my ability to take hits is unparalleled.
You don't know that unless you test it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So, tell me, you eventually do get paid. Right?
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually. And I mean, that's maybe a story for another day.
Yeah.
But once you get paid, I think you've shared with me in the past that, moving past that point, you actually also don't just want a business that offers financial return. You and Matt want to work on important problems. You want to work on a business that fulfills you, you believe in. And I know this is close to your heart, you're passionate about creating sustainable businesses to big problems in markets that aren't well served.
Yeah.
And I think this is just a great opportunity for us to segue into the Khula story and how that comes about. And if I can recall correctly, you will correct me if I'm wrong, but it starts with a trip.
Yes.
It starts with a trip that you and Matt take to Israel.
Yeah.
And maybe just share with our audience, because that's pretty formative.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
Tell us about that.
100%. So I think it starts with when the government pays us. Eventually, after lots of complaints and ombudsmen and stuff like that. Coming out of that experience, we saw how vulnerable that business was. And we were in a business where many other people could do what we were doing. We're so replaceable. We're in a very competitive space. We're so vulnerable to stuff like that. And having come out of that awful experience, the learning was we need to build something so good that it's us who can do it. We are the ones who can do it, and everybody wants to work with us because we're changing their lives so much. Whereas with that government experience, there were 5-6 other guys who could have done that job. Yeah. Sure. And we didn't know what it was at the time. It's actually Matt who went to Israel. On this, I think it was an Investec Young Trips thing. He goes there, and it's an agri-centered thing. And when he comes back, he's raving about agriculture. He's telling me, dude, you should have seen on a desert. You should have seen, mine and Matt's trait, or the core of our friendship, is that we dream, So, but now he's dreaming alone, and I'm not on board. And he's going, look, dude, it's so what, this and that. I'm like, agriculture is boring. It is brown. It is old people. Why the heck would anybody want to be in agriculture? But Matt every day is like, dude. And I'm a numbers guy. So we start unpacking the numbers of agriculture. We look into the numbers, and I'm like, this industry is this big? I think people take it for granted that what you're wearing right now is agriculture. What we're drinking is agriculture. Everything is, it's integrated.
Yep.
And I remember, learning that we've got 60% of the world's arable land. I'm like, that's crazy. So telling me 60% of, the untouched land where you can plant food and it grows is in Africa. That's a crazy stat, and linking it back to my economics days, surely this should be the backbone of our economy because it's such a strong economic advantage. We've got such great weather. Then you look at the numbers, it's like, no, 60% of everybody works in agriculture. I'm like, no way. When you live in Joburg or in Cape Town or in the big cities, that's kind of hard for you to understand. Sure. But if you look at other African countries, agriculture is the lifeblood of those economies, So looked at that, and I'm just looking at how we're so well positioned as a continent to feed the world, to literally feed the world, to be the center for all things agriculture. And then I realized we actually import more than we export. I'm like, how is that possible that we import more food than what we export? So the more I look into this, then I start looking at it in a local South African context, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think what came out of that experience between Matt and I was something's wrong. Something's very wrong in this massive industry, and we don't know what. And I think different to other entrepreneurs, we never had a great idea. We never had a moment of lightning that went, eureka, let's go. All we knew was it's a big industry, that it's super important. It's Maslow's hierarchy. So if you know Maslow's hierarchy, everything at the bottom, the food, shelter, that's agriculture, right? And that was kind of, it's big, it's important, and something's very wrong. But we didn't know what. We didn't know what. So even saying we started Khula in 2016, yes, it was registered in 2016, but not really, because from 2016, 2017, and a bit into 2018, we were trying to figure out what is this wrong thing? What is this wrong thing? And we started giving our services for free to farmers, where we actually worked on farms. Yeah,
I know and during that year in which you start exploring, and I think this is such a great, if there was such thing as a template, is just to spend and not rush the time you spend with your key stakeholders.
100%.
To understand their problems.
100%.
And I know you'd mentioned to me that you and Matt actually then in this effort, it's also one thing to do this academically. And in agri, you can't, right? You can't sit behind a desk and research the sector. You guys end up spending some time working on farms to understand those respective gaps. And I'm certainly not going to take away some of the things you guys have been solving for. But some of the big issues you identify: farmers don't actually know where to sell their produce. They have a perishable product.
100%.
Significant costs in the supply chain, both
100%.
to the end market and to agents. And ironically, the formal sector, the places we go to buy, doesn't actually want to buy direct from your smallholder farmers. So, and I guess you've already alluded to it in South Africa. Industrial-sized agri agriculture is not really recognized broadly anyway. Industrial is obviously the first, that is, but we forget that this entire country is underpinned by hundreds of thousands of smallholder
100%.
farmers, and you guys realize that, okay, actually this is our key stakeholder, and I love it. I hope that hasn't done a disservice to some of that journey, because just in the interest of time. But there is quite an interesting story I'd love you to share, because you've called this the day you acted like detectives.
Yes.
And you kind of followed the money.
Exactly.
Won't you share that story with the audience?
I think even for other entrepreneurs listening, you don't need to be struck by lightning. Sometimes all you need is sometimes an important industry that's big, that has a problem, and sometimes you can spend time figuring it out. So we worked on farms. So our previous business was still running. We were focusing more on private sector. It was making good money, I'm not going to lie. It made good money, but it had lots of down seasons. We'd be 3 months without work, another 3 months without work. And, so we used those down periods to spend time with farmers. And there's a farmer called Daniel, out in Eikenhof, by Walkerville, just outside Joburg. And Daniel let us bother him on his farm. We'd help him pack the stuff. And the penny really dropped when we decided to become detectives. So we said, look, let's actually follow where Daniel's spinach ends up, because you kind of drop it at these physical markets, and then you wait for the price, or what the price was on the day, and you wait for them to tell you if it's sold or if it didn't sell.
Sure.
We went there, and literally not too far from here, these guys, this other company picks up Daniel's spinach, they load it, and then they pick it up and they cross the M2, not the M1, M2. They cross the M2 and they deliver it at the ABSA building. And I think they picked it up. The going price was $350 that day, and they've got a variable price with their buyer, but I think they were selling for $1150 at the ABSA building. And we were like, what? This guy planted this thing for 3 months. He took all the risk. He took the risk of hail. He took so much risk, and you getting 11 Rand 50 per bunch, and he got 3 Rand 50 per bunch. That didn't make sense to us, because you're not adding any new value. You're just picking it up from the centralized market, and then you're taking it elsewhere and you're selling it for a much higher price. Then we started looking into deeper. So sometimes it would be guys taking it to an office building. Sometimes it would be guys that would take it to a processor. Maybe even, and the processor might also pay a premium. They might pay 9 Rand for what was bought for 350, and then they chop it up, they package it, they sell it to the supermarkets for 15, 16 Rand. If you do some cooking, you'd know that chopped spinach is about 36, 38 Rand if you buy it. But that's actually half a bunch. So they take one bunch, split it, chop, wrap. So if you take that 36, 38 times 2, that's almost 70 Rand odd of value that was created. But Daniel got 350 of that entire value chain.
Can't believe it, right?
But on the 350, 15%. So 7.5 roughly goes to the agent. Another 7.5 goes to the municipality. So then he's sitting with 15% less, plus logistics costs, plus labor costs. And he hopes that the spinach will sell that day. Because it might sell tomorrow, but it's not 350 tomorrow. It's 250. It's 1 Rand. And then on the third day, they'll probably throw it away because it's a perishable product. So you have a situation where the farmer's taking all of the risk in the chain, but all of the margin sits with other parties. And that was when the penny dropped. We were like, okay, this seems to be a common trait for all of these emerging guys. How do we help them then get that direct access into formal markets? And that was the beginning of what business are we going to build? And that was post 2016. And that's when we started ideating, and that's when we brought in our other co-founder, Jackson.
Amazing. Yeah, and what I love also about this show, we've had brilliant founders solving in health tech and the future of money and future of work, and it's so cool because you actually get this deep dive into the agri-supply chain.
Yeah.
Most people don't explore, right?
Yeah,
true. I go to Woolies, I buy my
just
lettuce,
buy
I buy my spinach, and
Yeah.
it's there. And surely at some point they source it from a farmer, but so that detail, I'm glad we've gone into it. 2018, you really start building Khula. And again, you've now identified the problem. There is a market access problem here. There is a trade problem here for your smallholder farmer.
Yeah.
And so you want to start building an MVP, and this is a trading platform.
Yeah.
Just in the interest of time, you do bring on the third co-founder of the
Yes.
business, Jackson.
Yes.
Very cool story about how you bring him on, because a lot of founders in the South African ecosystem often say, well, I'm non-technical.
Yeah.
How do I bring on a dev? Do I outsource to a dev agency?
Yeah.
Man, I've got to lose lots of equity.
Yeah.
You guys do that in quite an interesting way.
Yeah.
Very quickly share that with the audience.
Yeah,
How you
yeah.
ended up bringing Jackson on. And who was this guy?
Yeah, so we couldn't afford devs. Devs are super expensive
Sure.
to this day.
To this day.
When I look at my payroll,
Yeah.
the devs earn more than I do.
But we appreciate you. Cooler
We
devs.
love you, devs.
Yeah.
But the devs even earn more than I do, And at the time, you just can't afford a dev on your early stage and you're non-technical.
Sure.
But I think the idea we had was devs don't become great once they graduate. Usually a dev is great when they're 16, they're great when they're 17. The best devs start coding at an early age and they're brilliant in varsity, they're top of their class. They just become expensive once they cross that graduating line and into the workplace. So we essentially went to Wits. And we asked around, who the smartest or sharpest dev was at Wits. And his brother actually was tutoring Matt, because Matt was studying part-time.
Sure.
And he said, look, you can't touch my brother. My brother is literally the best.
Yeah.
And that's when we got Jackson on board. And we had to be smart with how we got Jackson in because we'd made a lot of co-founder mistakes in the past. So we said, look, come on board. These are the deliverables. And it turned out he's quite entrepreneurial. So he said, look, it's not just about the money. I want skin in the game. And we said, if you want skin in the game, if you do this and this and this and this and this and this over this period, then this much will vest over time.
Yeah.
And he took it on. He came on and, students are eating peanut butter and noodles. So if you give 10 grand to a student, it goes quite a long way. And that's how Jackson joined us.
Sure. It's amazing though, because this is 2018. By the end of that year, and forgive me if I'm wrong on my timeline, but this ends up being a fully fledged agri solution. You enter it into the MTN App of the Year Awards, which at the time, maybe less so today, but certainly at the time was really the front runner of recognizing startups.
Yeah.
And you guys win.
Yeah.
Business App of the Year. So this idea that's less than 12 months old, you win. Which is pretty amazing. And I know that you spoke very briefly to our live audience about just the value of these platforms. Of course, we try and do
100%.
Our own startup and investor awards at the end of the year for the same merit.
100%.
And it brought you global recognition.
100%.
So talk to us about how that recognition, maybe going into 2019, you've built this product, you've got this recognition, you actually start having some interest from investors. And what I think I've really enjoyed about our engagement is you've got quite a counterintuitive view on raising capital.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to us about how this progresses, right? We've got an MVP, you've got some recognition, you've got some investor interest.
Yeah. So we've got this MVP that we built, and we now, we have this MTN App of the Year sort of winning thing. And I think the importance of those kind of platforms, especially for early stage founders, is that they get you in the room. And I think MTN App of the Year didn't really change much in terms of what we're doing. But corporates were now willing to listen because you're the best app in the country, right? And then we started getting interest from a lot of VCs. And I do have some contrarian views around that.
By all means, share them if you like.
But I think a lot of them, it seemed they wanted to invest to get money back. They wanted to talk about exit. They wanted to, get us sending reports every 3 months. It just didn't seem like what we needed at the time that we were at.
Sure.
And what we really needed was a partner or partners that would help us build what we were building, not come to us and say, but you didn't make a profit this year, or your margins are low, etc. And post that's when we started engaging, at least we got approached actually, on some level by AECI, which is this big JSE listed company. I think what's their valuation? Close to 30 billion on the JSE. They came to us and they said, hey, look, we like what you guys are doing. Can we build something? What we liked about AECI is that, they could plug in real value. They could give us distribution. They could give us warehouses. They had a strong name in the industry, as opposed to what a VC would have given us at that time. Because money doesn't solve all your problems as a startup. Some startups that can give you all the money in the world, it's not going to solve your issues. You need that, the leveraging of an existing brand, the distribution, etc.
I hate to interrupt you there, but just for the context for the audience, you shared with me that you also realized that even though you had built a trading platform, there was also more to this problem, right?
100%.
There was a logistics element, there
100%.
was a financing element.
100%.
And so that does influence the nature of who you want to invest in you, like you said, more than just the money.
100%. So we wanted a strategic investor.
Sure.
And AECI fit what we wanted at the point that we were at. But then getting to the negotiating table with a company that's worth 30 billion,
course, right.
And you barely, you're barely earning a salary, Matt and I were living together at the time. So I think I wanted to kind of be smart about it. And we thought, what's the most smart way to kind of do this so that when we sit at the negotiating table, we're not the little guy, and fortunately, coming from the Alan Gray network, E-Squared is a fund that Alan Gray has, and it's available to Alan Gray fellows. And we thought the smartest way is to get E-Squared in. And then once you've got E-Squared in, we actually did a convertible note with E-Squared. Said E-Squared, look, we're going to raise these funds, let's do a convertible note, without really the intention of using the note, but to kind of show AECI that, look, don't bring money to the table because money is not the core issue. We're interested in your distribution. We're interested in your talent. And E-Squared came in. We had this fancy event actually just next to where we are. At the WeWork here, we invited them and got all of our clients to start talking, and we just touted how much money E-Squared had. E-Squared has billions of, listen, our new investor that we're announcing today has billions and billions. And AECI was so annoyed because they wanted to come in first. But when I started the negotiations with them in 2020, money was not a factor, or at least money was a lot less of a factor than it would have been before. Then my interest to them was, can you give us your distribution? Can you give us, the skill sets? Can you give us, your crop advisors? And the whole AECI deal was less about money than it was about us plugging into what they already had. And obviously the money was part of it. And I think we raised about 20 million.
Sure.
20 million odd for our seed, and AECI came in. But having E-Squared in helped position us better because they knew they couldn't just wave money at us. They had to bring real value. And to this day, I'm grateful that we structured that conversation that way.
And it's oddly counterintuitive these days. Most founders go out and we bang on the door of every VC and hope they just give me the terms I want and
exactly
the valuation I want. And I think just structuring it this way to leverage negotiating power,
100%,
really, really good wisdom for founders listening in today.
100%.
Also, a quick shout out to E-Squared. Great,
probably
I think one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the South African ecosystem, and a brilliant impact investor and also partner to Startup Club this year. 2020, you raised the seed round. That's about $1.3 million, 20 million rand. 2021, you now have the money to rebuild the platform.
Yes.
And you do so from scratch, but you don't do that too quickly. I think you almost spend the entire year just building, testing.
So we spent quite good time kind of building this platform. But for the first time, we could build the team that we wanted. We could hire, increase the number, get specific talents on the team, and look at how, we integrate with suppliers, etc. And we're still in a pilot, and people always used to nag us about, what do you mean you're in a pilot? You guys are big. But I think we stayed in what we call the pilot for a long time because the farmers saw themselves working with us. They didn't see us as a product that came to solve, to be a messiah and solve all of their problems. But they saw us as something that they were contributing and sort of helping to build. So we did a lot of building during 2021. Into 2022, we put out the Inputs app in 2022, publicly, proper launch. And once you launch, you're going to run into a brick wall immediately. It's almost like that Formula One starting, you know, and then after the first curve, there's a brick wall. And
sure.
And we ran into a brick wall. We weren't doing any animal health stuff. So we needed to start adding stuff for, you know, livestock and stuff like that. And as we were growing, you know, it became, we're seeing the value of having AECI, because this was an investor that's not saying, where's your margin? Where's your growth? They're kind of saying, how do we get this right?
And long-term strategic
this was,
alignment,
they're kind of like, we didn't do well. We're not doing well at that. But we're all, it's us and them sitting together, stressing, celebrating, stressing. So it's not an investor that's going, give me this and give me that. And the financing became a big consideration, because we had ABSA who we were already working with. And we started having a conversation with the existing board at the time. If at our boardroom table we had a financier, because AECI can provide expertise, they can provide all the production support, the actual products, the distribution, but the financing was missing. And ABSA wasn't giving us too much because they didn't have skin in the game. So we started conversations with ABSA. We said, let's get ABSA at the table. Again, when you go into conversations with corporates, you never want to be too vulnerable, because they'll take up your whole business. They will squeeze you. But when they came, we had an investor, we had traction, the volume was going on their rails, so they saw how well we're doing. And ABSA came on board. Now we could have the production.
As a shareholder.
As a shareholder, they came in, minority shareholders, so both AECI and minority shareholders. ABSA came on, and again, they giving us now, once they're skin in the game, we're taking a lot more risk with ABSA. We're doing, you know, even the ABSA deal wasn't about money. The money was actually quite negligible. We wouldn't even disclose how much it was. But it was about the strategic value. So it was like, ABSA, give us a pool of money to play with. We want to try this out, that. You're not funding Khula, but this fund is what we're going to use to test out this and test out that.
Amazing. Contextually for the audience, this is actually quite recent. So 2022, you did go to market with those new solutions. That was the Inputs platform and the financing platform, backed by ABSA. 23, they actually come on board as a shareholder and facilitate the finance function. And later last year, you've realized now that, again, and I love the way you've just built the strategic puzzle folks around the boardroom table, but you realize you actually also need an off-taker. So you've got great inputs, you've got great financing, you need an off-taker.
100%.
And this was publicly disclosed, but you do bring the excellent PepsiCo to the table. Talk to us super quickly about how that came about. And I mean, that's a massive business. How did they get involved with?
So now we're pumping. We're pumping good volumes. We're moving volumes on the input marketplace. Thousands and thousands of farmers, all organic, by the way. Nobody has ever seen a Khula ad.
Amazing.
An ad, but we've never done marketing. This is purely organic.
Love that.
We're pumping on the Inputs app, but our trader platform was pumping, but not as much as what we're doing on the input side. And we had production, we had finance, but what we're missing now was an off-taker, so a massive buyer. And also now I'm thinking about Series A, which is what we're working towards at the moment. Probably, I'm not sure if by the time this comes out, we'll already be done with that. And we needed this big off-taker. And we felt that an SA off-taker would not have done the job, because we've got global kind of ambitions. We wanted a partner that we could work with globally. And now we're kind of nearing, going to the global stage. I met somebody at PepsiCo randomly in a meeting that I shouldn't have been in. And as he was hearing the pitch, he was like, this is crazy. Can we meet? And we met some more. And it took us a while, even with him, because we had to sell this across the group. And you can imagine the layers of a global company. And everybody was like, this sounds very appetizing. And PepsiCo is the second largest food and beverage company in the entire world. I think their revenues are close to 100 billion US annually.
It's crazy.
So that's more than SA, I think, more than our GDP or around there. And we felt PepsiCo would be the perfect partner for us to scale. But they just bought Pioneer Foods locally, which is your Bokomo, your Liquid Fruit, your Movite, your White Star, maize meal, and all that kind of stuff. And we got into those conversations. Probably the hardest of all the 3 deals. It took me a long, long time to put that deal together. And yeah, end of last year, one of the global CEOs came down, and we've got full buy-in from PepsiCo, from the local office all the way to the top. And we're already planning out, the global expansion plans. But the reason PepsiCo is at our table is because whenever we put a deal together, and I think that some of this will be public in the coming months or so, is that ABSA will finance it, AECI will do the production and everything that goes into logistics, etc., and PepsiCo gives the offtake. But we can make a deal the way we want it at our table. Yes, we have other buyers, all the probably 4 of the big 5 retailers, etc. But at our table, we're able to put together a new way of financing. We can test things out because PepsiCo's got skin in the game, ABSA's got skin in the game, and AECI's got skin in the game as well. Yeah.
And I think that's how you constructively challenge the status quo of this massive industry with huge incumbents and way of doing things.
100%.
Right? Is you have to bring clout.
100%.
And now you have that.
100%.
And, I think I was really excited to see the Khula deal disclosed in Pepsi Global's annual results.
Yes,
and,
yes.
It's such an amazing flag to be flying for South African
100%.
tech business as well. So, of course, I hats off to you. I think just very quickly, I'm conscious of our time. Of course, thank you this morning, Karidas. But we'll get into where the business is today. You've spoken about some exciting things happening. What has come to the fore specifically in the last 24 months for founders pretty much around the world is the fact that even as we talk about these things, we've skimmed over a decade of your life in a matter of minutes. A lot of highs, a lot of lows. A lot of deals.
A lot of lows.
Deals sound super glorious. And flip, it's over the line. And it's great press. And check me out. But I think you've also shared with our audience in person, but with me offline, that this does take a big mental toll.
Incredible.
And the last 12 months has probably been one of the hardest of your life. If you are willing to, can you just speak for a few minutes about firstly, like just what that's been like, and secondly, what you found has helped you just find some stability and maybe even still doing that, right? And I don't think anyone's got it right, but maybe share with us a little bit.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs, sit on platforms like this and we talk about how great it is. And you've got Pepsi and you've got ABSA and you've got thousands of farmers and you're doing hundreds of millions in revenue and all that kind of stuff. But I think as an entrepreneur, especially as a founder, it takes everything from you. It's an incredibly stressful job, especially in my role as CEO, because that runway is my responsibility. I need to make sure that, we always, wherever we are, I need to make sure we at least have a year and a half worth of runway if we never made a cent. I always tell the team that we call it Mauritius money. If we all went to Mauritius for how long would we stay there before we run out of money if we're not making a cent? And it's incredibly stressful putting the deals together, the workload, the early mornings, the late evenings. And I think from about funny enough, it's when things got better that it really started hitting me. And I think in a way, it's also the culmination of all the years prior. And it's a lot of burning, waking up early, sleeping late. And I started getting to a place where, you're drinking more, just when Friday comes, you just so happy to leave and you just want to get sloshed, and kind of finding these sort of ways to kind of cope and to escape and to kind of deal with the stress, deal with the pressure. And I think last year, post the Pepsi deal, I think I had literally the week after probably my biggest mental crash of my life. And I mean I'm a Bantu, I come from a township, you don't cry.
Talk about that stuff.
Nobody knows what depression is, at home. It's like, you're sad. There's food in the fridge. Why are you sad? And I think after that week, when we're done with PepsiCo, and on the Monday, I go back to the office and I realize that, we need to do 40 million before our financial year end. So our financial year end is end of Jan. And I realized that we need to do 40 million rand, in GBT. And my heart just sank, man. I just worked so freaking hard putting this deal together. it's a momentous moment. You know, we've got this global company that's on our cap table, and you know, I just wanted to rest, and I realized
but it never ends.
That if I don't bring in, if we don't bring in $40 million or $30 million by the end of Jan, then we would have had a not great year, you know. And I crashed. And I think it wasn't even about where we were then. It's about the story of my life where I have not known rest. You know, like the story I've been telling you now from the age of 5. I've been working, I've been hustling, and yes, I can glamorize it, but I've kind of always been pushing towards something. You know, you're in high school, you need to get to varsity, you're in varsity, you know, you're starting this business. It's just always, I've never known what it's like to rest. And I think the tough thing about my life is that if Khula doesn't work out, I'm screwed. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs are fortunate enough that your parents did well. You know, you can go back to a nice cushy home. My mom depends on me. So if this doesn't work, she's not going to have something to eat. So part of why I pushed hard is because my life depends on this. And, you know, I work on Khula because my life depends on it. But I was just tired, and I had not even a single ounce of energy left to bring in this 40 mil. And I looked ahead and I'm like, okay, if we bring in this 40 mil before end of Jan, then I need to start all over again in the new financial year. Then I need to close the Series A. Then it just looked like my life is just not going to stop. And I just can't do it anymore. And I've got nothing left in the tank. And yeah, I had a very dark 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you. It was, yeah, quite awful. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't wake up in the morning. I was proper depressed. And I think the more you're alone, you know, the darker it becomes. And I just locked myself in my apartment. And yeah, I had really crazy thoughts, man. And I really felt that I just can't, man. I have nothing left. I've given it everything I have. And yeah, I really wanted to end it all. Wow. You know? And that was a very palatable idea in my head. You know, it's like, look, I'll write a letter and Matt will take care of things and my mom and stuff, and he'll know what to do. But I just can't, man. There's nothing to live for, because all I'm doing, everybody in my life looks to me to solve things at home, at work. It's just like, when is my break coming? You know, and it's just one thing after the next. Sure. And I remember I called Matt, and I sent him a WhatsApp. And he's like, dude, I'm feeling the same. And Matt has a family. He's got 2 daughters. And we met for coffee. And I think we're both just finished, man. Just finished. And he really picked me up at a time where, yeah, I just didn't see purpose. Called another friend of mine, and we sat. And yeah, I just had lost, I don't know how to explain it to you, dude. Like I was, and it sounds very like a nice life problem, because you got PepsiCo, you got all this, you're doing well, you've got this company, hiring lots of people. But I was finished, because every day is a fight. And for the last 30 years, my life's just been a fight every day. And it just, I guess, talking to Matt, I don't know, solo founders, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how those people exist. Those are incredible people. And I think I just started doing some work, a lot more work on my faith. You know, for me, that is my belief in God is what's kind of helped me, you know, go through life, for a big chunk of my life. Sure. And I think the period where I was resorting to other things, kind of, I lost that anchor, you know, and I started working a lot more on that. And I did take a break. It's not a complete journey. You know, another thing about these stories that I'll sit here and I'll say, it happened and now I'm fine.
You're mid-journey, right?
You know,
you're transitioning still.
So it's not a now I'm fine thing, you know, but I think working on my faith has been game-changing for me, because it's almost like I've got someone to take the load and give it to, because I can't carry it anymore. That was really, really, you know, massively life-changing. I started cycling. Anybody who is on my private Instagram would know everything is about cycling. Sure. And just adding stuff. But I won't lie to you, even today, last week, I'm tired, dude. I am freaking tired. Because every day is tough. You're taking punches. And like I said, entrepreneurship is the ability to take punches, right?
Sure.
But I think even at a certain point, you get tired, and I'm looking forward to getting the Series A done so I can at least take some time off, some peaceful time off. Because you can't even take time off, because if you're about to lose your biggest client, they're going to call you on a holiday.
Accountable, right?
Yeah, they call you on your holiday.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So I think I'm still in that journey, but
Sure.
I think there's certain people in my life that are special to me, and that are kind of helping me kind of walk
Amazing.
through it. But it's just I'm just tired, and even today, my life depends on this business.
Sure.
If I don't get it right, I don't have a fallback. I don't have something that's gonna catch me. And it's not rosy that I'm fine now.
Sure.
And I don't have all the answers, but
Yeah.
I think I'm still on a journey of,
Khula is growing super fast to the point where you actually can't meet demand at the moment.
not at all.
Again, these are great problems. You are looking at pilots in other parts of the world, South America and India, if I can recall. Obviously, great folks around the table now with these key stakeholders and actively raising your Series A. I've got no doubt in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see big things from Khula and progress and new markets and all these things, which in one respect probably excites you, and in another respect says,
scary.
I actually just, I need a break before I think about that. And I
scary.
think you've earned that privilege.
Yeah.
Talk to me very quickly, because one of the questions I like to ask all of our guests prior to them leaving is, what does success look like for Karidas? What does it look like for you at, I can't say the end of all of this, because it looks like you've picked this as a lifetime journey, and whether it's this for the next 20 years or many things in your life, does success look like finally, buying all the things your heart desired, or never having to worry about money again? Or, what does that look like? You and I are on a stoop one day and we're reflecting on it all. What does it look like to have lived a successful life for you?
I think it's almost a synonym of between peace and rest. I think I have not known, or what it's like to rest, or not. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a point. If I can reach a point where my whole life has felt like you climb a very high mountain, you get to the top, as soon as you lift your head, the next one is higher, and you get to the top, and even the next one is higher. So I'd love to at least get to a summit where there's a bed and some rest. I think it looks like peace. It looks like rest. And I think, in a capitalist world, peace means money. It's not free, it looks like getting to a place where my entrepreneurial work, or what I'm doing, my life doesn't depend on it. Where I can, to some extent, do it also for the joy of it. It looks like peace. And I know for sure that this is all I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I'm going to be building things. I'm going to be breaking things. But it looks like reaching a point of peace, but a point of rest, because there's always something now where I'm at. And like you said, we're at a point where there is no way we can service the volume we're getting. I mean, the zeros I'm seeing are numbers I've never seen before, in terms of the demand we're getting. And I'd just love to get to a place where I can rest. And that looks like family. That looks like, it looks like family. It looks like greater meaning outside entrepreneurship. I haven't had much of a social life. That's another thing people don't really talk about. Entrepreneurship is what I do. During the difference between working hours and non-working hours, at working hours, I can think about it peacefully. I can now think, how am I going to close that?
Sure.
But I'd love to get to a place, to a peaceful place where I can rest, but also where I can do entrepreneurship, not from a place of my life depends on it.
Sure.
And I would love to get to that's sort of the next point. And maybe if you ask me the same question when I've gotten to that point, it might be something else.
Of course.
But the thing I'm chasing now is peace and just rest from the last 30 years.
It's a good, as far as targets go,
Yeah.
pretty good target. And actually, it's the builder's
Yeah.
dilemma,
Yeah.
right? We're also galvanized by the things that we're building. And
Exactly.
but I think, I just have to say, of course, on behalf of the audience today, a massive thank you for your transparency, for your candor. I think I said that to you after our live event, was that most folks just really appreciated the genuine insight into what this journey's been like. And I think you probably have folks around the country that ironically you'll never meet that are going to take stuff from this very, very short interview.
I hope so.
And it has the ability to change direction of what they decide to do
100%.
and how they decide to do that. And that is a pretty beautiful thing. So I think on behalf of all us, massive thank you. We're excited to see where you go, where Khula goes.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Karidas Tshintsholo,
Thank you.
founder and CEO of Khula.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks for listening to today's episode. That was Karidas Tshintsholo, co-founder and CEO of Khula. I'm Matthew Marsden, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our socials, and share this with your network. See you next time.